Hey guys, so today we're going to be taking a look at 10 tips that can help you travel more while you're working full time. And so nowadays it seems like everybody's trying to escape the 9-to-5 life by becoming a digital nomad or an entrepreneur to have a little bit more flexibility. And it can seem like that may be the only way to travel to a lot of the exotic locations that you see on Instagram and Facebook. However, that lifestyle isn't going to be the best fit for everybody. My wife and I, for example, are full-time engineers, and we really like where we work, the type of work that we do, and who we work with. And on top of that, we really like to be close to our families, and we like the consistency that comes with the full-time jobs that we currently have. One of the biggest downsides with 9-to-5 jobs, especially in the US, is limited vacation days. In most of the jobs that I've worked, I've typically had around 10 vacation days per year. But with a little creativity and planning, we've never let that get in the way of the overseas trips that we wanted to take. So if you've been wanting to travel more and you felt limited by the number of vacation days that you have or the type of work that you do, hopefully some of these tips will help you get out there a little bit more. So tip number 1 is to book your flight as far in advance as possible. Now this may seem like an obvious tip due to the price savings that you might get from booking earlier, but there's also a few additional benefits specifically when dealing with your work. First of all, if you book your flight out in advance as far as possible, it's going to cover you in case any unexpected projects or deadlines or surprises at work come up, as they always tend to do. So if you've had your flight and hotels booked and paid for a number of months and then something comes up, most offices are going to be pretty understanding if you're unable to make changes in your trip plans. In addition to covering you against any work surprises, booking your trip early also builds an internal commitment to getting your work done so that you can leave everything ready so that you're going to be able to travel. So that's really going to help you prioritize all your work in the weeks leading up to the trip to make sure that you leave things in a good place for when you head out. Tip number 2 is to take advantage of holidays and long weekends. This is not always easy to do with family commitments or school schedules and whatnot. For us, it's always been a worthwhile trade-off to have that extra day or two that doesn't eat into the limited number of vacation days that we already have. Tip number 3 is to take advantage of business trips. And I know everybody doesn't necessarily travel for work, and the people that do travel for work, it's not always a glamorous lifestyle, so it is nice to be able to take advantage of it when the opportunity does come up. For both of our jobs, we've had to travel to South and Central America, to Europe, and even other places within the United States that are really cool cities, so whenever we have the opportunity to do that for work, it's always nice that a big portion of transportation and hotel is going to be covered for at least a few of the days, and then most companies aren't going to have a big problem if you extend your trip out by one day to hang out in a particular location over the weekend and then just come back the next week. As long as the flight and hotel costs are going to be about the same, usually you won't run into any issues, and even so, it might be worth covering the difference in any flights or hotels if your company's cool with that, just to be able to take advantage of the opportunity since you're already in a different location. The next tip on the list is to ask your job if you're able to work a day or two remotely. Depending on the type of work that you do, that's not always going to be an option, but with the way that technology has been advancing and how it's becoming more normalized in the workplace, many employers are willing to give you the opportunity to work remote for a day or two if you've shown that you're a trustworthy employee that's going to get their work done regardless. There's been a few times where a holiday has fallen on a Tuesday or a Thursday, and it would have been hard to take that extra long weekend if I didn't have enough vacation days, but I just talked to many of my managers about working remote for that Friday or that Monday, and because of the work that I'd done within the company and I'd been there for a little while, they had the trust that I was going to be able to work remotely effectively, and most of the time they've been okay with it as long as I reassure them that I'm going to be very easy to reach and work the same hours as I typically do on a given day. And from what I've seen with talking to my friends that work in similar jobs, a lot of companies are becoming more open to this. It's really just a matter of asking and building up that trust with your employer. And if you'd like to see a future video talking a little bit more about some of the things that I found helpful for asking my managers on whether I can work remote, please let me know in the comments. The next tip on the list is to book direct flights, or at least with the minimum number of connections as possible. We've been able to squeeze out a nice amount of extra time on each of our trips because we always try to minimize the amount of time that we're actually traveling. And we've seen many of our friends fall into the trap of taking multiple connections to be able to either book flights with points or to save a little bit of money. And ultimately, if time is what you're most short on, it's going to be worth it to pay a little bit more and just make sure that you can get that direct flight to maximize the amount of time that you're actually at the location that you're planning to visit. Another big benefit of booking direct flights or minimizing the number of connections that you have to deal with is that you reduce the risk of any delays or missing flights. When you're traveling, many times you've booked hotels, you've booked activities, all of which can be non-refundable. So when you have an additional connection to deal with, if you end up missing that, it could be a very costly mistake. So even though you might spend a little bit more on your flight, the peace of mind and convenience that you get is typically going to be worth that little bit of extra cost. The next tip is to travel to places that are pretty easy to get to. Many times we've talked to people that don't want to travel unless it's to some really far off location that's going to require a lot of time and planning. We live really far from Thailand, for example. It takes about 20 hours to get there with different flights and stops. And Thankfully, we were able to go, but whenever we want to take a quicker trip, there are a lot of locations around where we live that we can get to within a weekend. So based on your geographical location, there's likely going to be at least a few places that are only a few hours flight and that are going to be pretty cheap to get to. So in our case, where we live, it's very easy to get to different places within the United States, to South and Central America and the Caribbean. And most of the time, it's not going to be that long of a flight, so we'll typically be able to visit many of these places within a weekend and still be able to get a lot out of the trip. If you have specific places that you want to visit that are a little bit farther, or you just really like to take a lot of time to plan your trips, this can be a little bit of a difficult idea to embrace, but with practice it becomes a lot easier, and we've been able to take some of our best trips on a moment's notice just because we chose to travel to somewhere close by. Moving a little bit in the opposite direction, tip number 7 is to take advantage of rollover vacation days. Although it's been nice to take quick trips to kind of spontaneous locations, there are a few faraway places that we've always dreamed of visiting, and so when that was the case, the only way that we were able to make that work was with rollover vacation days. So we would sacrifice a shorter trip and save some of those days up so that we can take full advantage of a longer trip later on. Again, this may seem like kind of an obvious tip, but many times people just let their rollover vacation deals build up. Sometimes they expire, sometimes there's a cap on how many vacation days you can roll over. So it's good to be familiar with those policies and really maximize the amount of days that your job is providing you. Tip number 8 is to negotiate with your job for more vacation days. This is something a lot of people maybe don't know that you can do. When it comes to negotiation, most people tend to focus on increasing their salary or bonuses and maybe don't know that you have the ability to negotiate for vacation days as well. And on the surface, sometimes this may not seem as enticing, but many companies are constrained by the budgets that they have for a particular year, and they might have a little bit more flexibility with the amount of vacation days that they can offer you. And for people like me that love to travel, that's sometimes even going to be more valuable than an increase in salary. So if you're feeling that you want to travel more and you have a performance review coming up with your managers, make sure to take vacation days into account with any negotiation conversation. Tip number 9 is to take advantage of unpaid time off. Now this is something I didn't even know existed until fairly recently. And so many companies will have a policy where you can ask for additional days on top of the allotted vacation days that you have, and they'll just deduct a specific amount from your paycheck. And if you have a little bit of a tighter budget, this may not be an option that's possible. But if you have a little bit of savings and you're just really wanting to take that trip and all you need is an additional few days, then I definitely recommend talking about this with your manager or your HR department. And so the last tip on your list is to really prioritize what you plan on doing on your trip based on the type of traveler that you are and the interests that you have. And so really understanding our likes and dislikes while traveling has helped my wife and I to really get the most out of the trips that we've taken in the least amount of time. And so when I talk to a lot of my friends that haven't been able to travel to different places that they want to, one of the biggest excuses is that they just wouldn't have enough time to really get the most out of the location that they're going to go to. And I can definitely understand where they're coming from. Whenever we research a place that we're traveling to, we always read a variety of blogs, and there's just an endless list of things to do in any city that you're going to go to. You can get off the beaten path, you can do the tourist attractions, there's millions of restaurants to try. So it can get pretty overwhelming to try to cram a bunch of stuff into a shorter amount of time. But the thing is that even when things are really highly recommended, if it doesn't match up with the things that you like to do, then it's not really going to be worth spending any time on it, even if it's something that that location is very famous for. To give an example, my wife and I aren't really into museums or art, so we went to Paris and we stood outside the Louvre, but we were very happy to not go in, and that saved us a bunch of time. There's many people that will go to Paris and spend many days just walking through the Louvre, admiring everything. And I can totally understand that if that's something that interests you, but for us, we both kind of knew that that wasn't really going to make our trip any better. So we just skipped that and used that time to explore other things around Paris that we were going to enjoy more. And of course, there are always people that are going to say, how could you go to Paris and not go to the Louvre? Or how do you go to New York and not go into the Empire State Building? But really, if those things aren't of interest to you, there's no reason to spend time on that. And if you focus on the things that you like, you'll be able to see a lot of a different city in just a short weekend. So whenever you're planning your trip and you feel like you're just not going to be able to do everything that you want to with the time that you have, really look at the activities that you have planned out and ask yourself if you're doing it just because it's the thing that most people say you have to do at that location, or if it's something that you genuinely want to do. And so that's it. That's our list of 10 tips that can help you travel more while working a 9-to-5 job. Hopefully there was something there that was helpful that you hadn't thought about before. And if there's anything we missed or any tips that you found particularly helpful for making the most out of a limited amount of vacation days, please let me know in the comments below. And so I'm definitely curious to hear what you guys think about this video. I want to do more videos like this in the future where we can share some of the things that we've learned as we've been traveling over the years. And as always, I want to thank you guys for the support. And if you guys found this video useful, please go ahead and give us a like. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming videos. And thank you guys so much.